In the heart of a buzzing African city called Ibuko, where the sun kissed the rust-colored roofs and goats still wandered near glass buildings, there lived a man whose name echoed from the slums to the palaces, Chief Gidado Malu. They called him the man who owned half the city, and no one said it lightly. He had started as a skinny boy with nothing but a rusty wheelbarrow and a dying mother. But now, he was the owner of malls, hotels, fuel stations, and banks. His black SUV glided through the dusty roads of Ibuko like royalty. When his vehicle passed, even police waved first. Even politicians waited for him to speak. But Chief Gidado never smiled anymore. In the tall golden mansion on Ibira Hill, built from imported marbles and guarded by lion statues, the chief lived alone, surrounded by his accountants, lawyers, bodyguards, and servants, yet drowning in silence. He had children, yes, 3 sons and a daughter. But none of them stayed. His first son, Tunde, lived in London and only called when he needed something. His daughter, Amira, was married into a foreign family and never returned after the wedding. The other 2 sons were in South Africa, chasing pleasure, wasting fortune. His wife, the only woman who had ever challenged his pride, had died 15 years ago in that same mansion, quietly during a rainstorm. And from that day on, the laughter in Chief Gidado's eyes disappeared like the river that dries when the gods are angry. One hot afternoon, when the harmattan winds had just started their dance, Chief Gidado called his doctor. He had been coughing blood, not just once, but many times. "You must go to Lagos," said the young doctor nervously. "They have machines, sir, the kind we don't." But the chief raised one hand. "If the gods want me, let them take me here." 2 weeks later, the doctor returned with test results trembling in his hands. His voice cracked like dry wood. "It's cancer. Stage 4, Chief." There was a heavy silence in the marble room. Then the chief, still dressed in his blue agbada and red coral beads, chuckled dryly. "So it is settled. Word spread like fire in dry grass. Chief Malu is dying, and, as African custom demands, the elders of the land came to see him. Dressed in their traditional wrappers, their walking sticks thumping gently on the floor, they arrived one by one to pay respects. He sat among them like a lion who had seen too many hunts. "My fathers," he began, voice heavy but calm, "I have built schools, mosques, churches. I have lent money to the government and fed the poor. But I have a final request." All eyes turned to him. A silence deeper than death itself filled the room. "When I die," he said slowly, "I want all my wealth buried with me." Gasps escaped. Lips. Even the wind outside seemed to stop. "You mean, in your coffin?" one elder dared to ask. "Yes. My gold, my cash, my titles, my rings, my watches, even my bank documents. I want it all inside my coffin." A long silence. Then the oldest elder, Baba Zubeiru, nearly 92 years old, leaned forward with sorrow in his eyes. "But Chief, you know we don't take anything with us. Not even the body crosses into the next world. Only the name we leave behind." But Chief Gidado only stared out the window to the city he had built. "Then let my name be the man who took it all, and still found no peace." The village square of Ibuko had not seen such tension since the great drought of 20 years past. The news of Chief Gidado Malu's final wish spread like wildfire through the streets, alleys, markets, and prayer grounds. The idea that a man, no matter how rich, could demand to take his wealth into the afterlife was unheard of. In African tradition, wealth was to be passed down, shared, and blessed into the community after death. No man had ever dared to ask for such a thing, except Gidado. 3 days after the declaration, the Council of Elders gathered again under the massive baobab tree in the center of Ibuko. 7 stools were set in a wide circle. On 6 of them sat the most respected elders, their robes heavy with the dust of time, their faces carved with the wisdom of many years. But the 7th stool, which always belonged to the chief during meetings, remained empty. It was not because he had passed. It was because the elders could no longer look him in the eye. "His heart is heavy with pride," muttered Baba Zubairu, "and pride, my brothers, is the whisper of the devil before a man crosses to the land of the ancestors." The youngest elder, Pa Luka, shook his head. "But can we deny his final request? He has done much for Ibuko." "He has done much for himself," another replied bitterly, "and now he wants to take everything, even the blessings, away from us." Meanwhile, in the heart of Ibuko, people argued, at the open-air market where old women sold cassava and fresh fish. Debates broke out under every shade. Imagine! Gold in a coffin while our children go hungry. Did we not clap when he gave money to the governor? Now we want to cry because he wants to keep it? He is not a king. He is just a man. And even kings don't carry riches to heaven. On the 7th night, a black SUV arrived from the airport. It was Amira, Chief Gidado's daughter, stepping out in a long green caftan with golden earrings that caught the moonlight. She hadn't been back to Ibuko since her marriage in Morocco, but when she heard of her father's condition and the strange will, her soul grew restless. She stepped into the mansion with fire in her eyes. "Where is he?" she demanded. The servants bowed and pointed toward the inner chamber. There, on a carved wooden bed, covered in white sheets and lion-embroidered pillows, lay the man who had once taught her how to ride a horse with her eyes closed. "Papa," she whispered. Chief Gidado opened his eyes slowly. "So, you came." She walked in, knelt beside him, and took his wrinkled hand. "I heard your wish, and I came to stop you." He looked at her with tired, glassy eyes. "I have given this world everything, Amira. And now I know I gave too much to the world, and too little to myself. But, Papa," she said gently, "you have us. You have your people. Let them carry your name through schools, through stories, not through gold in a box." But the chief shook his head. "I have 3 sons who want nothing but clubs and cars. I have a people who cheered while I gave but never asked if I was dying inside. I have a name, but no peace, so let me go as I wish, wrapped in wealth, so they know I was never poor in spirit." Her tears fell silently. And outside, the baobab tree whispered in the wind. The elders met again the next morning. The empty chair still stood among them, this time not just as a symbol of absence, but as a sign of division. Some said to honor his request. Others said to burn the will. But all of them agreed on one thing. If Chief Gidado was to be buried with all his wealth, then the spirit of Ibuko itself might cry. For in this land the dead leave blessings, not gold. By the time the Harmattan wind returned with full breath, Chief Gidado Malu was no longer walking. He sat in his chair by the grand window of the Ebira Hill mansion, wearing his signature agbada, now loose on his shrinking frame, and stared endlessly at the city that once danced at his feet, no longer spoke unless necessary. His doctors whispered about a week, maybe 2. The mansion became a fortress of whispers and hushed prayers. Servants walked on tiptoe, and the heavy chimes at the entrance were silenced. His lawyers and personal banker came in quietly and left with downcast eyes. All knew what was coming, but what none expected was what the chief had already begun in secret. Far from the public eye, deep within the gated workshops in the chief's estate, a group of skilled craftsmen had been summoned weeks earlier. Their task? To build a coffin like no other. Carved from the rarest ebony wood, inlaid with strips of ivory and Ghanaian gold, and embedded with diamonds on the lid, this was not a coffin. It was a throne for the dead. Inside, compartments were designed to hold gold bars, stacks of naira and dollars, title deeds, rare watches, even his mother's old prayer beads. Everything he once touched with pride. Even his first bank ledger, signed with his blood thumbprint in 1978, was to be folded gently and placed under his chest. The lead craftsman, an old man from Benin named Oganedijiri, paused when he saw the design. "This is madness," he whispered, but he took the pay. Like everyone else, all 4 children had now arrived, not out of grief, but curiosity, confusion, and, for some, silent greed. They stood before their father, barely knowing how to speak. Tunde, the eldest, wore a designer suit and dark sunglasses. He didn't kneel, just nodded and said, "We heard you've made arrangements." The chief's eyes narrowed. "Did you come to bury me or bury your disappointment?" Tunde looked away. Amira, still emotional from her first visit, sat at his feet. "Papa, let's talk again. Let's speak of legacy, not luggage, of story, not silver." But he merely closed his eyes and whispered, "I have written my legacy, in silence. Let it be buried with me." Soon, the city buzzed with preparations. Ibuko had never seen such a funeral in planning. The elders, though still divided, had begun meeting with the chief priest, the imam, and the Catholic bishop, because no one could decide how exactly the chief wished to be buried. He had donated to all faiths, built shrines and schools alike. "He was all things," said Baba Zubairu. "Now he will return to all." But whispers continued. "Is it true? The coffin will carry millions? They say even the grave has been dug in marble. Can he really take it with him? What if he cursed the land?" One night, in the quiet of the ancestral hut behind the main estate, Amira called her brothers to a meeting. Only the fire crackled between them. "We cannot allow him to go like this," she said. "He's our father," said the second son, Kola. "But this is beyond sense. Burying cash, while children sleep hungry?" Tunde scoffed. "So, it's his money." "But we are his name," Amira replied fiercely, "and when the people spit, they will spit on us." They argued till dawn, and at last a plan was born. That night, as the sun bled into the soil of Ibuko, Chief Gidado had a dream. He was walking through a desert. Gold coins spilled from his agbada like sand. He saw a gate, shimmering, blinding, but when he reached it, a voice boomed, "You cannot enter. You carry too much." He fell to his knees. "But it is mine," he said. "I earned it." The voice replied, "Only a light heart passes through. You come heavy with the world." He awoke, gasping. For the first time in years, he wept. Despite everything, the burial was set for 7 days after death, as custom dictated. The golden coffin, now complete, was kept in a locked room. Rumors grew. Cameras circled the gates. The people of Ibuko watched closely. The question sat like thunderclouds over the land. Will the dead man truly take his wealth to the grave, or will the land rise and speak before he does? The sun rose unusually, dim over Ibuko that morning. Even the birds were quieter, as though mourning a man who had already measured his worth in gold instead of goodness. By 8 a.m., the gates of Chief Gidado Malu's estate opened slowly, revealing a caravan of vehicles behind a golden hearse unlike anything anyone had seen before. Crowds lined the streets, not in grief, but in curiosity, skepticism, and fear. Children whispered, "Is the coffin really made of gold? Will he be buried with all that money?" Some elders watched in silence, while others shook their heads. "This burial is an insult to our ancestors," muttered old Mamandidi. "The earth will not welcome pride," replied Baba Zubairu. Drummers beat softly as the coffin was carried, slowly, by 12 strong men, specially chosen for their build. The weight of the gold was tremendous. Following behind were the chief's 4 children, dressed in traditional black lace with golden embroidery. Their faces revealed nothing, but inside a storm was raging. Amira's eyes stayed on the coffin. She kept hearing her father's dream, which he had muttered feverishly before he died. The gate, the weight, the voice. She squeezed. The small amulet she wore under her wrapper, her late grandmother's charm of truth and humility. The grave had been dug at the highest point of the estate, Malu's Rise, where the chief once stood and declared, "No man shall ever forget me." As the coffin was lowered, the elders from both the mosque and church gave their prayers. The chief priest of the Ovia oracle poured libation and called upon the spirits of the land to accept what is given. The coffin glinted in the light. The grave had been carved in stone, lined with marble and bordered with golden trim, a literal vault. Everything was ready. But then it began. The moment the coffin touched the bottom of the grave, the sky darkened, a thunderclap roared, though there were no clouds. Suddenly the ground began to shake. The marble cracked. The golden edges trembled. The coffin, all 600 kilograms of it, tilted to the side and refused to stay level. Gasps filled the air. People stepped back. One of the laborers shouted, "It's sinking!" The grave began to collapse inward, swallowing dirt but rejecting the coffin. It rocked, tilted, and finally burst open, spilling gold bars, bundles of cash, watches, chains, and papers onto the ground. A silence fell. Then, screams. People ran. Some shouted curses. Others dropped to their knees. Amira whispered in awe. The earth refused. A madman, one who had lived near the estate walls for years and was often mocked, suddenly stepped forward. With clarity he shouted, "What the dead man tried to take, the living shall inherit. The earth has spoken. What feeds no soul shall feed no soil." He pointed to the gold and said, "Bury here a man's kindness, not his coins." Then he fell silent and sat on the edge of the broken grave. No one moved him. Later that evening, after the crowd had cleared and the sun had returned to its place, the family met beneath the baobab tree. Tunde spoke first. He wanted this, but the land refused. Kola nodded. "Maybe it's time we give back what was taken." Amira looked to the sky and whispered, "Let us bury him with his story, not his savings." They decided to cremate the golden coffin, melt the riches, and build something living, a hospital in his name, a school in his mother's memory, a marketplace for the poor, and finally a small simple grave at the foot of Malu's Rise. Just a name on a stone, Chief Gidado Malu. He learned too late. Weeks had passed since the day the earth refused to accept Chief Gidado Malu's golden coffin. What had once been a town known for its silence under the shadow of one man's wealth had now become a place alive with questions, conversations, and change. Children played freely in front of the estate gates. The whispers of Chief's ghost, still guarding his gold, had faded, replaced by louder talks. "Did you hear? They opened a clinic with that same money. They say Amira teaches village girls how to manage business accounts now. Kola is fixing the roads near the fishing village." And for once, Malu's name was not spoken with fear, but with curious reflection. In the chief's private safe, Amira discovered something unexpected. It was a handwritten will, not stamped or witnessed, but entirely in her father's handwriting. Pages stained with sweat, perhaps written in the final months of his illness. It read more like a confession than a legal document. "If I had one more year, I would live differently. I'd feed mouths instead of locking gold away. I'd listen more, punish less. I'd give my children time instead of transfer deeds. I would walk barefoot in the market and remember what hunger smells like. Her hands trembled. She wept silently. That night, she read the words aloud to her brothers by the fire. No one interrupted. By the end, Kola simply said, "Then let's live his last wish, even if he didn't sign it." The family gathered the melted remains of the gold. They divided it not by share, but by purpose. Amira built the House of Renewal, a center where girls and widows could learn trade, literacy, and finance. Tunde funded the Malu General Clinic, providing free health care for children and elderly villagers. Kola restored the old Ibuko library and turned the estate gardens into a public park, and all across the town, the phrase began to take root. True wealth is what survives you. Chief Gidado Malu was eventually buried under a simple stone with no fences, no guards, no golden gates. His grave became a place where fathers brought their sons, not to mourn, but to teach. A boy once asked, "Why doesn't the richest man in Ibuko have a statue?" An elder smiled, touched the stone gently, and said, "Because his greatest statue is in what his money finally did, after he could no longer touch it." Months later, the madman who had spoken at the burial returned. He was cleaner now, calmer. He brought with him a small seedling in a clay pot and placed it at the grave. As he pressed it into the soil, he said only one sentence: "Let something grow where gold once tried to rule." That seed became a tree, tall, mighty, and with golden-colored leaves. Locals began calling it the Tree of Regret. But the children, they renamed it the Tree of Second Chances. And so, the man who once wanted to be buried with all his riches became a silent teacher of humility. His final lesson echoed in every brick laid, every bandaged wound, every laugh in the market. It's not what you take with you. It's what you leave behind.